Good morning, CWCC. Welcome to Girls Club Top 25 edition. We have with us today one of my dear friends, Jennifer Chang. I'm so excited to hear from you, Jennifer. And I see you've got your Top 25 award like right behind you.
I do. It's one of my prized possessions. I love it. And being on video all the time nowadays, just being able to see that in the reflection is just a great reminder of, some amazing times to come and some amazing times that we've had in the past. So thank you.
Oh, thanks. And thanks for being with us. And I understand you're, obviously with Cisco too, which is right behind you. And you just got a big promotion. I want you to celebrate and share.
Oh, thank you, Kristen. So yes, I actually moved from regional manager to sales operations director at Cisco. I went from the federal team. I'm still under US public sector, but now I lead a team of teams. So I have 4 different regions that roll up into our operation. It's the state and local education sector for the West by Midwest operation. So that's a 13 state operation from the Northwest all the way to the Midwest. And of course, incorporates the Rocky Mountain states as well.
I'm so just so happy for you, right? And especially in tech, right? It's just exciting and it's awesome to hear those stories. And I also oftentimes when I think of tech and I think of women in tech, we think of engineers and things like that, but it's cool that you're doing sales operations, right? Because I think that women can bring so much to that.
Yeah, no, thank you. And our sales leaders are really, our sales leaders and our engineers are the backbone of what makes Cisco great. And so it's amazing to have such an incredible talent rolling into our operation and having the opportunity to lead these future leaders as well and help develop them.
Oh, well, congratulations.
Thank you
That's
so
awesome.
much. Thank you.
And so, tell us about, since you've been promoted in your role and how things are going and how things are for you personally and professionally.
Well, it was really interesting, moving into the role. So first of all, I was kind of doing both roles from May of last year, and then I officially moved into the director of sales role in July of last year. So coming up on my official 1-year anniversary. But right after I moved into the role, Cisco actually offered some early retirement packages. There was some business restructuring that was happening. So a couple of my frontline managers took those packages. And I ended up having to wear a couple of extra hats and be a frontline manager to many of our individual contributor account managers. And that was a lot, being able to lead during this time of COVID in which we were all virtual, trying to get to know a team and establish trust and psychological safety during such a unique time. And I didn't realize, how much I had to be focused also on my own self-care. And I think that so much of it was being reactive, trying to recruit and bring in new talent, make sure that we're hiring the right folks. And it wasn't until about a month ago when one of my great girlfriends, a bridesmaid in my wedding, she came out to visit. And I had come to realize, wow, I haven't really been refilling my cup and taking my care of myself to the level that I thought I needed or that I didn't realize I needed. I mean, I have an amazing husband. I was working out about 30 to 45 minutes a day. Like, hey, I'm doing self-care. No, like until you actually are around folks, friends that are family or family members that are super close to you that really just understand you to a level that, is like home to you, you don't really come to realize that. So that was a big wake up call and reminder to me that as leaders, we have to make sure we take care of ourselves as well, because we're not of great use to others if we don't show up as our best self too.
Right. And I think, it's so interesting because I think that we need it, right? We need to be filled up that way and we need to have that connection with other women, right?
Yes,
Women are so
absolutely.
good at that.
Yeah.
They're so good at, sometimes we can be bad at it, but I would say for the most part, I hear way more stories of women being filled up by other women. And that's why I love that you're a top 25 winner. And we're doing this series on top 25 award winners leading up to this year's event in August. And you're just a prime example of what that means. And I'm excited that we get to talk about these 2 questions because it's actually one of the reasons why you were chosen to be top 25. So we get to actually hear more of the story of how you live and breathe that award. So tell us about a time in your life when you've persevered, because that's like one of the critical aspects of getting the award.
Yeah, thanks for that question, Kristen. I think, first of all, I just celebrated my 10-year anniversary at Cisco back in March.
Congrats.
Thank you, thank you. So I think with that, plus the promotion last year, it's been a really reflective time for me. And when you talk about that question, I think specifically about when I moved from individual contributor to people leader at Cisco while on the same team, right? So as difficult as that is moving from individual contributor to leader, also moving from teammate to leader on the same team, I look back at that time and I think about how folks always, assume that a promotion should be a really exciting, positive time in your life. For me, it was a time when I really struggled. I was really trying to figure out what is my leadership voice, and I didn't have the maturity enough, honestly, to really understand what that looked like or what it was. And so instead, I kind of mimicked other folks in my life that folks compared me to, right? They said, "Oh, you're just like her." So I would take some of those, best practices and kind of incorporate them into who I was, but it wasn't authentic to who I was. And it was like writing with my left hand when I'm actually right-handed. And so many people around me and other leaders could see that I was struggling. And it wasn't until I really had that vulnerability to go to my team, like take my heart out of my chest and basically say, "Hey, guys, I'm struggling here. I'm trying to figure this out. Please, stick with me and we'll get through this together." And that was a really pivotal moment, right? Being able to show that vulnerability and have the team rally around me, have myself rally around the team to show that we have each other's backs. We had 5.5 years of incredible growth and success. And I still look at that time as being that pivotal moment when, hey, like striving for that authenticity is so important in that moment and that vulnerability in that moment, because that's when you really establish that trust and you're able to grow from there.
Right. Well, and it's so true, really, when you think about it. Like you think about the generation before us and how they didn't have role models to look up to of leading like women lead, right? And then there is that authenticity, and there's so many ways to behave along the spectrum there that women are really emulating in the workforce, I think. And so that's, obviously one of those other things. I mean, as a top 25, we want other women to look up to you, right? And know that you can be vulnerable at work. But how did you get to the point where you felt safe doing that? Because I know like in my past, I've just recently learned how to do that as well. But before, like I would get scared. Like, well, if I'm
Oh,
vulnerable, maybe they'll use that against me, or I won't be in my job anymore, because you think that you have to emulate strength and that you have all the
mhm.
answers.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you bring that up, Kristen, because for a very, very long time, I didn't think I belonged in corporate America. I felt like I was the square peg, round hole, square peg. I mean, whichever way you want to look at it. And I had to look to others in corporate America that I knew had that authenticity, that vulnerability, that real genuine nature. And I looked at them for inspiration and I said, okay, if they can do it, if they can continue to be successful, then there is a place for me somewhere here. Right. And I think that we've seen such a shift in corporate America, especially over the
Right.
past year and a half with COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And there is such a focus now on that compassion, the empathetic, authentic leadership piece. But for a long time, I didn't feel like I fit in, right? And so I did feel like I had to kind of shove that down, which again, didn't let me show up as my genuine self. And I think so much of that comes with maturity too, right? Maturity, experience, growing up, feeling comfortable in your own skin. It took me a while to get there. And I think what helped was being able to have a team with high psychological safety, right? These are folks that I used to work with as teammates, and I
Mm-hmm.
moved into the leadership role. And so I had a lot of that trust and psychological safety already. And so it got to the point where I just had to be okay with allowing them in, because I had felt like moving into the leadership role that I had to be a certain way and show up a certain way, when in the end, being my genuine self was what really resonated with them and what was able to bring us together to move forward.
I love that term, psychological safety, because it
Yeah,
is true. You do have to be and feel safe in your workplace to be who you are, right?
yeah,
And feel
absolutely.
psychologically good. I mean, it's why, like, when you're, when you do mergers or acquisitions or whatever, like, there has to be that level of safety there. You have to, or you can't function, right? Like, just like
Yeah,
in real life, if you're not mentally healthy, you can't function. You have to have that same thing at work. I love that term.
I agree. Well, and there's so many studies that are actually done on successful teams and teams that continue to deliver great results. And the one thing they have in common is a high degree of psychological safety, that
Huh.
trust, right? Being able to make mistakes and not have a fear of ramifications, like being able to come together and figure out, okay, how do we learn from this together? How do we grow from that and move on and implement new processes to, help to remedy that? But
Right.
let's not have this be a fear-based type of
Yeah.
environment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So true. Well, kudos to you for being able to do that because, clearly you are an inspiration for so many women and such a great role model, especially being, kind of one of the rare few in tech leadership. So
Thank
thank
you.
you for trailblazing. Okay, so tell me about a mantra that you live by.
Yes. Well, I think this mantra goes right hand in hand with the story that I just shared with you. First of all, it comes from Sheryl Sandberg from Facebook. I absolutely love her. And she talks about how leaders should strive for authenticity over perfection, right? That is just such an amazing mantra to live by. I really, try and embrace it every day and show up as my authentic self at work and be able to really be genuine and vulnerable in my conversations with my team members as I try to lift them up and also, come to each conversation with great intent in my heart to want to improve, them to help to make them successful and be a true servant of leadership. But that authenticity piece over perfection is so important because I think as women, we think that we have to be perfect all the time, right? We think that we have to show strength all the time. And really, some of our best strengths come from that empathy and compassion that we bring to the table.
It's so true. And, I was thinking about this as you said, like, we feel like we have to be perfectionists, right? And then
Right.
grappling with being authentic as well. And, is there a time in your life where being authentic kind of came back to bite you? Right? You're like, oh
Oh my
crap, I
gosh.
was, and then this happened.
That's a great question, Kristen. And I think that my immediate reaction, I look back, to a couple of times where I probably showed more emotion at work than folks were used to, right? And I wear my heart on my sleeve. I get verklempt and choked up, probably more easily than the next person because
Right.
again, wear my heart on my sleeve. I'm an emotional person. And so I showed a little bit of that and I actually got reprimanded. So, and that was a different time, right? That was a different time and a different place. But certainly, I think inserted fear into how I showed up and, tried to force me to push those feelings down. And that's difficult, right? That can be very damaging to not feel like you can really be who you are if you're going to be reprimanded for showing that. So that was one of those times. And
Yeah.
the great news is, Kristen, like I am so excited with how corporate America is making that shift, how business is making that shift in general, and how folks can show up and show that emotion and be embraced for it now, and be, commended for it, right? To be
Right.
able to show that instead.
It's true. And we just need to, I'll never forget one of our members was sharing how she had a client and she shared with her something that was going on with her daughter. And the client was upset because the daughter was a priority and that had to push her back. So she fired her. Right. And I'll never forget, this woman saying, I just realized that she wasn't my people. And it just
Mm.
helped me surround myself with the types of clients that were. So even when we are vulnerable, right, like it leads you in the right direction. I just don't think that there's any going wrong with it. So
Yeah.
we have to be who we are, especially as women. So thank you so much for sharing
Oh,
with us today and for being a top 25 and for being an amazing example for everyone. I appreciate your time. Thanks for all you're doing.
thanks so much, Kristen. It's been such an honor being a part of the Top 25 family, and I can't wait to welcome our next Top 25.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.